Saturday morning cartoons were a scam. Not the cartoons themselves, something bigger, something that was happening to all of us at the same time, and none of us noticed. I'll explain. But first, we need to talk about 6:15 a.m. because there was one morning every single week where you woke up completely voluntary. No alarm, no parent standing over you. Your eyes just opened. And the first decision of your Saturday, the most important decision of your entire week, was waiting for you in the kitchen. The cereal. If your parents bought the good cereal, Cap'n Crunch, Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms, Froot Loops, life was working. System was functioning. Someone in your household loved you and made good decisions on your behalf. And everything was going to be okay. If they bought the bad cereal, you were having Corn Flakes. The cereal that exists purely to remind you that life is not always fair and your parents are not always on your side. You're sitting there eating beige sadness out of the bowl while Tony the Tiger on TV is literally on the box screaming about how great things could be. The disrespect was staggering. Now here's what nobody talks about when they talk about Saturday morning cartoons. The cartoons were almost beside the point. For approximately 2.5 hours, the living room belonged entirely to you. Your parents were asleep. No one was going to ask you to do anything. No one was going to change the channel. No one was going to turn it to the news and sit there watching people in suits talk about things that weren't cartoons, with expressions like the world was ending. It was just you and the TV, and however much cereal you could pour into that bowl before anyone noticed. This was freedom, actual freedom, the kind adults spend the rest of their lives trying to buy back. And you knew it. Even at 7 years old, you knew this was yours and it wasn't going to last. Then you had to find the right channel. You were just turning the dial one click at a time, praying that you didn't land on golf. There was always golf at that hour, in full color. Like someone out there genuinely believed children wanted to watch a man in plaid pants walk slowly across grass in complete silence. Every Saturday, without fail. So you found your show, and here's the part of your brain has probably never fully processed as an adult. You watched whatever was on, start to finish. No skipping, no rewinding, no pausing. If you missed the first 5 minutes of something, you missed the first 5 minutes. That was it. Gone into the universe. Never coming back. There was no, I'll catch it later. Later did not exist. There was only now. And now was He-Man. So you watched He-Man. Even if you'd seen this episode, even if you'd seen it 4 times, you watched it again. Because what else were you going to do? Turn it off? Nobody turned it off. And then there were the commercials. The toy commercials specifically were their own separate entertainment. You'd be watching a cartoon and then suddenly a commercial for a toy you had never seen before in your entire life. And 30 seconds later, you needed that toy with that full force of your entire soul. It had existed for 30 seconds. You'd been aware of it for 30 seconds, and already you were mentally drafting a formal presentation for your parents about why this was a necessary purchase and what it said about them as people if they said no. You were 6. You had no leverage whatsoever, but you had conviction. The cereal commercials were even better because they had ongoing storylines. The Trix rabbit, episode after episode, season after season, just trying to get the cereal. Never getting the cereal. Not once, not ever. And we watched every single time, hoping, emotionally invested in the breakfast outcome of a cartoon rabbit who never learned his lesson and never will. That rabbit is still out there somewhere, cerealless, being mocked by children, 40 years later. And we watched every time, hoping today would be different. But here's the thing nobody ever talks about. We weren't just being entertained, we were being worked. Now, we need to talk about the PSAs, because every cartoon, every single one, ended with a life lesson. G.I. Joe would stop in the middle of an actual military operation to explain the dangers of playing near electrical equipment. He-Man, a man whose entire personality was being the strongest person alive, would put down his sword and break the fourth wall to discuss the importance of talking to a trusted adult about your feelings. The Ninja Turtles had opinions about recycling. Transformers covered peer pressure. Optimus Prime, a truck, had thoughts about honesty. A truck. Here's what was actually happening. The same company that made the G.I. Joe cartoon also made the G.I. Joe toys. The same company that made He-Man stop mid-battle to discuss emotional vulnerability also needed you to ask your parents for the Battle Cat playset by Christmas. They built the guilt and the product in the same factory. The cartoon existed to sell you the toy. The PSA existed so your parents didn't feel bad about the cartoon. The whole thing was engineered, start to finish. And we sat there eating our Corn Flakes, nodding along, thinking we were learning something.
Knowing is half the battle.
The other half is realizing you never stood a chance. At some point, and you always felt it before you heard it. Your parents woke up. First the footsteps, then the coffee maker, then the very specific sound of an adult moving toward a room they were about to reclaim. And just like that, it was over. Your dad sat down, asked what was on, changed it, and the kingdom returned to the grown-ups. What I didn't understand then, what none of us understood then, was that one of those Saturday mornings was the last one. We didn't know which one. Nobody told us. There was no announcement, no final episode. One week you just stopped waking up at 6:15. The TV was still there, cereal was still there, but you slept in. And that was that. Saturday morning cartoons were never actually about the cartoons. They were about those 2.5 hours when the house was still quiet and the world was exactly as small and safe and perfect as a living room at 6:15 in the morning can be. We didn't know we'd miss it. We never do. Tell me in the comments, what was the cereal? Good cereal or Corn Flakes? I need a full accounting. And if you had the one cartoon you would not miss under any circumstances, the one that got you out of bed, drop that too. Because I guarantee we were all watching the exact same thing. Subscribe for more Gen X memories that felt completely normal at the time. They were not normal. They were everything.